what is your running origin story? And what I mean by that, to give you an example, is I'll admit it, I've been watching the Marvel comic book series on Disney Plus, where you have, the Avengers, the Endgame, Age of Ultron, etc. But what's also really cool about the series is that you have the Avengers being the main kind of sequence, but you also have break-off movies that describe each of the different characters: the Black Widow, Thor, Ant-Man, Captain America. And in the process of watching those, you learn about the backstory of these characters. How did Captain America come to be? How did Black Widow come to be? How did the Hulk come to be? And it's great to watch because you learn all the different things that happened that ultimately culminate in them in being this version of themselves, this better version of themselves as the Avenger. And so I got to thinking, what happened to make someone a runner? And I think it's a great question, and I think it's fun to think about for yourself. Some people discovered it really early, right? Maybe some people are just athletic and they started running in high school and they got addicted and they went to college and they ran, and that's great. That isn't my story, and it may not be your story as well. In fact, I think some of the more interesting stories are the people who discovered running later in life. For me, I had a kind of three origin stories that eventually made it stick. The first one being that I was exposed to running first for, I guess, maybe a year or two seasons in high school in cross country. And it was interesting. I enjoyed it. I wasn't any good at it, and it didn't stick. When I went to college, I didn't run at all for the 4 years I was at college. So it was a fun thing to do, but it didn't really associate to me as an activity that I would continue. The second kind of origin story for me was I was out of college. I was working for a corporate, a large, one of the big three consulting firms, and I was working a bunch, working 90 hours a week. My weight had a balloon to be about 30 pounds heavier than I was when I was in college, and it just wasn't great. And I remember one day putting on a pair of running shoes and going out at night and running. And the next thing I knew I had run something like 8 miles, and it was hard, it was slow, it was exhausting. But when I got done, I was like, that was a great feeling. And then I continued for a few more days, but it didn't stick. And then I stopped running again. And then I came back to running about 4 years after that. At this point, I was living in Manhattan. I was working on effectively Wall Street, and I was still in the same rut. I was 30 pounds heavier than I was working, 90 plus hours a week, was unhealthy, was eating pizza every night, and it wasn't a great situation. And then once again, I found a pair of running shoes, I put them on, and I remember just going out my door. I lived in the Lower East Side at the time, and just at night, running up 2nd Avenue. And all the people were out there eating restaurants. I was running on the streets. And then I would run along the East River, and then I would run, across the island to get to the west side, to come back down through Battery Park. And then I would take some time and I would run through Central Park, and this time it stuck. And before I knew it, I had signed up for a half marathon on Staten Island. And that was now maybe 11 or 12 years ago. And that was it. That particular moment stuck. But for me, I think of that as my true origin story. It was a moment where I was looking at my life and I didn't like what I saw. And I picked up a pair of shoes. I knew how to do the activity because I had been exposed to it, introduced to it at other points in my life. And I put them on, and it made me feel great. It gave me something to look forward to. It allowed me to start setting goals. And it was an activity that I've continued every day since. So I'm curious, share it if you want, or just think about it for yourself. What was that moment? What was that moment where you became a runner? What is your running origin story? If they could make a a Marvel movie about you, because running is a superpower and you are a superhero if you're a runner. How did that happen? What was your story? How did it come together? I'd be curious to know.